Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Turbocharge Tomorrow, fireside chats with innovators, visionaries, and leaders in technology. Joining us today is Johnny Lee. He's a partner and managing director and the global head of technology innovation and platforms at AlixPartners. Thanks so much for joining us, Johnny.
Hey, how's it going? Very excited to be here today.
I love it, and it looks bright and sunny where you're at. Where are you located?
I'm based in sunny LA.
That's awesome. I'm right here in the South Bay. I love your background. It looks fake, although we said in the pre-interview that's a real. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So let's get started. Let's dive right in here, Johnny. Today we're talking about AI and its impact on the humanity and the people behind the technology and the workforce. AI is rapidly reshaping every function within enterprise, from finance and marketing to copywriting, and especially within the technology teams themselves, with AI specific engineering roles surging in demand, with companies prioritizing skills in machine learning and data engineering. And meanwhile, traditional roles that were focused on manual tasks, so maybe like QA, are projected to decline in the next 3 to 5 years at best, maybe even sooner. As AI-driven automation takes on more of these responsibilities, Johnny, given your broad expertise, what trends are you observing in the way technology teams are structured, and especially as AI becomes more integrated in them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And AI touches on so many different parts of our lives, and we can start around the engineering and technology perspective, right? So, we're like you said, there's a lot of discussions about we have AI writing code for us. We have AI doing testing and automation and all these tasks. And so, how do we think about it in terms of the structuring of our teams? I want to just preface with like, this is AI is not new, right? We've had different things like RPA and other types of machine learning and data science throughout our technology lives. But with the rise of LLMs, we're seeing AI generating content that it didn't before. As I mentioned, we see AI generated code. And so from a software development perspective, I think it's important to still maintain the focus on like what are we trying to achieve and how do we get that to the right level of quality and the right outcomes. And that does require a human intervention, as much as we'd love to let the machines go write the code for us. I think about a good analogy is, great engineering managers or great engineering leaders, why are they important? And they're valuable to organizations because they can work with their engineers and understand their strengths and weaknesses and coach them, to push them, to help them become better engineers. And I think in a world of LLMs, it's similar. As an engineer, you need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the output of your machines, and how do you coax the most out of them, and how do you validate the outcomes and output that they produce.
That's interesting, in this idea of the unique skill sets of the developers and also the unique skill sets of the AI. As a manager, are there frameworks that you're using or recommend for technology leaders to strike that balance between leveraging the AI tools and the best of their abilities, and then valuing the unique skill sets of their team members and their unique skill sets as well, and their values?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're still very early in terms of where we are on the progression of AI developed code, right? And so what I encourage performance engineering teams is to develop the skill of adaptability, right? Innovating and learning of what are the capabilities across the different solutions in the market today, and knowing that that solution could become either dramatically better tomorrow, or there'll be other solutions that will beat that solution. And so it's almost like learning how to do a Google search, right? It's a good way to think about how do I get the right answers. There's actually a skill in running your internet searches. And so similarly with these type of tools and with our engineers, we encourage them to keep an open mind, to have enough of an innovation budget to go experiment, to play, to return to the tools and see what works and what doesn't. And how do we put all the pieces together in our overall development process?
Yeah, it sounds like and it sounds like this is like there's like an overreaction to prompt engineering. What you're saying, it's not prompt engineering. What you're saying is like, hey, there are things that generative AI is good at and not good at, in terms of, complex reasoning. It's one area where it's probably not so great at, but, doing manual repeatable tasks is something that's there. So from what you're saying, you're indicating that managers can try to double click into what their team complements their AI. Do you have any recommendations for how you're doing that, or do you have any examples of how you're seeing that work out right now?
Yeah. So a couple of examples. One of it is how do you validate the output, right? So traditionally, let's go back 5 to 10 years in a traditional machine learning world, what you would do is you would have human beings validate the output almost like 1 to 1, like 100%, right? Because you want to make sure that you're getting things perfectly correct. Now, does it make sense for us to do that today? I think today what we're seeing some trend is a combination of humans reviewing the output of AI and also using an additional AI agent to also review that work. So you kind of have some degree of accuracy because you're not able to scour the entire output of that. And you want to do it in a scientific way where you have some type of statistical confidence in how much you can trust the work. And so, again, I think these techniques continue to be refined. There's a lot of really good traditional, I would say, software engineering techniques that are still valid. So, a couple examples, right? Automated testing, right? If you have a preset group of tests and outcomes, then you can continue to change the code but run it through the automation testing and see whether or not the results line up. Another example is around, load and performance testing, right? Does the performance of your software improve in terms of how fast it comes up with the results? What is the load that it can sustain while generating the same results? And that's also done in an automated fashion. And then finally, you have your very traditional, what I call pair programming or code review process, right? Where you have a more experienced developer overlooking the development of that code. That code could be done by a junior engineer or it could be done by AI and understanding and coaching and fixing the actual output of that work.
Well, that's an interesting perspective in terms of like the junior developers and the skill sets they need. Um, you know, just this summer, Amazon's technology leadership team told its software engineers to start retooling their skill sets over the next 3 to 5 years. Like with tools like GitHub Copilot and Cursor automating more and more aspects of coding, do you foresee significant shifts in engineering roles, maybe especially for these junior developers who are now doing less of the actual coding itself, and now it sounds like more of the trust but verify
Yeah,
responsibility?
yeah, that's a really good call out, right? So again, going back to 5 to 10 years ago, what do junior developers do, right? They go to Stack Overflow, right? They find a code snippet and they copy and paste it, and then they kind of look at it and go, does that work? And then they might run some tests and they'll go, okay, and then they submit that code. And so in similar vein, right? When now the code is generated through LLMs, the junior developer still needs to be able to look at it and validate, like, is this actually accomplishing what I wanted to do, right? And what are some better ways to do this? Because the AI is not always going to write the best code. There's always going to be optimizations to be done about it. And so these are different skill sets. And as I mentioned earlier, our junior developers need to get better and faster at testing and using these different tools and learning how to use the tools, right? Because where they're going to get the most effective engineers are the ones that are going to be able to maximize the leverage out of their existing tool set.
Do you think we're gonna, in your view, will companies need fewer developers in the future, or is there still like an important role for junior developers as these AI tools become more prevalent and less of the work is their hands on keyboard actually, creating, tables, and more of it is prompting and reviewing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think overall, software development throughput will not go down. I think it's only going to increase. I remember early on in my career, um, back in the heyday, there was the developer community was worried like, oh, there's a lot of outsourcing trends that are going to happen, right? A lot of engineering jobs are going to India, for example. Does that mean there'll be fewer developer jobs in the US? And that was the opposite, right? There's like been continued demand for software development both in the US and in India. And the reason for that is most companies are becoming technology companies, right? Even our clients today, from manufacturing to whatever industry you can think about, they're becoming software companies. So the overall software development throughput will not go down. I think it's going to continue to go up. Another good example is like energy, right? Energy consumption by the world has only increased over time, and we become more efficient at it, right? We have all the energy for your dishwashers that's going down, your appliances. Cars are more efficient; they use less gallons per mile, right? But what happened? The energy consumption continues to increase, and so I think for software development, it's the same. Our tools are getting better, and we'll have these wonderful LLMs and different ways to do automation. But overall, the aggregate need for software technology is going to continue to grow, and you'll still need human intervention and humans involved in that development process.
What would you say to kind of the concept that there's something lost with a junior developer where, is there importance, is there value in actually hands on keyboard creating the code itself versus prompting? And I guess the question is it old world versus new world? Are we just in a new age where it's not as important for them to do that? Or for junior developers out there or managers of junior developers, is there still value in having them still write the code themselves, even though the machines can do it and are working alongside them as like a career investment? Or is that something that managers shouldn't be thinking about right now?
I think it's absolutely valuable, right? When you think about, to use another analogy, writers versus editors, right? The great editors, start as being writers themselves, and they're writing, they learn how to write better, and that gives them a glimpse of how to become a better editor. And I think for engineers, a lot of engineers do the work because they love the craft, right? There's something exciting about working your hand on the keyboard. You have your IDE, your Emacs or your favorite, whatever it is. And sure, there are tools, auto completion and filling in the blanks and putting in structure, but there is a visceral enjoyment about writing the code, editing the code and running it and see how it develops. So I think there's still a lot of value in being hands-on so that you can get into the details and fix things as needed.
Yeah, I think what's kind of neat about the area we are in right now, like this idea of AI empowered, where the AI is not doing all the code itself. There's still very much a human element. And for me, I don't know, it's just like a vision of an engineer late at night banging his head against the keyboard, like frustrated. Whereas now there's almost like kind of you ever did like a maze book back when you're growing up? You can look at the back of it just to, like, if you get stuck, or a crossword puzzle book with all the answers in the back. You just go like, oh, that's the one clue I needed, and like you can like grab that one little piece that was frustrating you and like sitting you behind, and all of a sudden you can get back on your way.
Yeah, well, it's still going to happen today, even with AI generated code, right? You will still see these obscure behavior in your systems, like, wait, why did the system behave this way? And that's going to require your engineers to dig into the code base very deeply and finding out like what is that thing that is causing something unexpected.
That's interesting. And so the value is still there for the coding itself. You know, this segues into the next theme that could be very interesting to folks who are listening out there, of domain expertise. So, Johnny, you have deep, extensive background in fintech and consumer mobile and emerging markets. And you've highlighted, the importance of having deep domain expertise previously. You've said deep domain expertise is irreplaceable even as technology progresses, but how do you see specialized knowledge being complemented by technology, I guess, in consulting and today?
Yeah. So in my career, and I'll give you two examples. One when I was in fintech and today at AlixPartners. Back in fintech, what we did was we used machine learning to help improve people's lives in emerging markets like Kenya or Philippines. And the way we did it was we would try to predict a consumer's credit worthiness using data science and machine learning. And we were an early stage startup. We had some amazing investors, and they would always ask us the question like, you guys are doing a great job, but what happens if, you know, Facebook, brings on 10 of their smartest data scientists to try to put you out of business? What are you going to do? And I was never worried because our data scientists not only understood the skill of data science, but they actually understand the domain of credit lending, and they understood our users in Kenya and Philippines. Like, they traveled there, they understood it. And so, for example, Philippines, if you have a typhoon, then all of a sudden nobody's paying back the loans, right? If you're just a really smart data scientist, you may not realize this is a seasonal issue in the Philippines. And it's not because people are not credit worthy, it's because there's a major weather event. And so this type of domain expertise is really important to solve the problems at hand. And so coming to today at AlixPartners, like, our approach is unique in that we help our clients solve the most urgent problems when it really matters. And what that means is we bring people who are deep domain experts who have actually played the actual operational roles of our clients today. So it's not just a very smart and hardworking person, but it's actually someone very seasoned who's done that specific role, either marketing or finance or operations. And what my role here is using innovation to deeply embed technology in how we solve those client problems. So imagine if you can combine the expertise of decades of experience with amazing technology, AI, software, product management, all of those things to deliver the client result, then you get an order of magnitude better outcome. And these two things can't happen in a vacuum. They happen side by side. And so I think the domain expertise is always going to be valuable and important for us human beings in solving all types of problems.
Do you think in the future there will be a greater value on the domain expertise as the technology solutions become not more standardized, but and not easier to solve per se, but the use of generative AI in solving, I've heard people call it the muck, the smaller issues, and leaving the complex stuff to the humans? Will that then create a world where that domain expertise is increasingly important than the ability to say, hey, I've created databases, I've created, a consumer app for this one industry, I can do it for another industry? But are we entering a world where, the more that you're, deep, you dig a hole, a trench like 2 miles deep, better than, 2 inches, a generalist versus a specialized? Is that where you're seeing it going, or where do you see AI fitting in for, just your everyday, developer or product person or and designer?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. I think deep domain expertise is going to be increasingly valuable because the more we lean on AI and machine learning, the more you need that domain expertise to actually know if the machine's actually coming up with the right answer. That said, and we talked about earlier, I think there's still a horizontal skill set for, let's say, engineers, right? Which is, how do you get better at your craft? And that means, how do you learn these new tools? Can you adapt faster than the previous generation? The biggest challenge with technology is that the rate of change is so fast, right? And so there's so many new tools, so many new technologies popping up. Do you have the skill set to quickly absorb them, learn them, and leverage them into your work? And I think of that as a horizontal skill versus a sort of a deep domain skill. And so I think if you can find where your niche is, then that's really going to make you exceptional relative to what is the norm.
I'd like to pull on that thread a little more because I think it's particularly fascinating. So this idea of you need to have deep domain expertise within the company, or at least, seek it out from an AlixPartners if you don't have it in your current partner, your current company. Do you see that folks are, do you see industries where it's ripe for having that expertise, brought in house to them? So like a traditionally older school technology, I think you've mentioned a couple, like energy sectors, isn't known for its software development, particularly for its software development innovation. Where do you see AI playing a role in them, especially in terms of like maybe this, if they have the deep expertise or if they're looking for deep expertise horizontally and vertically, how do you see it fit into their strategy?
Wow, that's a big question. So,
We only have
um,
30 minutes. Sorry about
yeah,
that. We could spend a whole hour on that alone. Sure.
yeah. Let me give an example where we're helping some of our clients using technology across different domains, right? So, one example is using LLMs to um, read contracts or documents. Imagine thousands, tens of thousands of documents. The use case is a very important consideration. So, for example, in litigation, right, when you're dealing with courts and legal, you need to be, close to 100% accurate, right? In the world of private equity, when you're moving really fast and you're, diligencing a new company, probably 80% or better is good enough of an answer. And so you think about that as a technology capability that we can power the specific verticals or domains to do that. And so if you are a supply chain company, like you still want your supply chain experts, but you don't want to over index in building out of a large team of AI and machine learning experts. But what you want to do is leverage other companies like mine or other groups to help you do that. And we've spent a lot of energy building this sort of like document consumption. Imagine in the past, we had to do it in a very manual way, and even in a manual way, human beings would still get it wrong 5 to 8% of the time, right? And today we can actually get to a very high degree of accuracy that is statistically significant using what I described, which is manual review, as well as using some LLMs to actually review and validate the work. And so today, we have technology that we built in house where we can process over 10,000 documents in less than an hour. And in some cases, 1,000 files under 30 seconds. And this is going to really turbocharge the experts. If I'm in litigation, I don't need to depend on weeks and weeks of reading documents. I already have that answer at my fingertip. For private equity, we can quickly diligence a target and figure out, hey, how much do we want to bid and try to acquire that company?
And then depending on the size of the data set too, it's like it doesn't need to sleep. So it's not like you're dependent on working hours. It can work 24 hours a day. So you just set it up, and maybe it takes 2 days, where it could have taken a week or two. Just even with not even human versus machine, just working hours available to a machine versus a human. Do you see any examples of companies that could leapfrog into AI? I guess maybe put another way, and I might kind of put you on the spot here, Johnny, because that wasn't part of our practice, prep interview. But if you were to like create a curve, saying, hey, as a company, I'm behind the curve, I'm middle of the pack, or I'm ahead of the curve, what could and should people be thinking in their AI strategy right now as it pertains to, I guess, first as it pertains to like software development, because it's what we've been talking about a lot this episode.
Yeah. So there's a great question. I think the way to think about it is where you are in the stage of your maturity, right? In terms of if you have been investing in technology all along, you're probably pretty good. Like it's might be an incremental investment in your capabilities to go to that next level. If you sort of been in the middle of the pack, I actually think that's kind of a more challenging position to be in because you've invested into your systems and they're deeply embedded into your processes, right? And so if you actually want to bring something that is completely brand new, then you have to redo your processes, retrain your people, and what are you going to do with your existing investments and your contracts that you have, right? So I think that's actually a more challenging situation to navigate. And in some situations where you're actually really early in the journey, where you've maybe neglected investing in technology over the past years, that's actually kind of a sweet spot because you're starting from greenfield. Right? You can actually go from where you are all the way to the bleeding edge. And we've seen this trend happen over and over again. Example, going back to Kenya, you know, Kenya sort of skipped the whole PC era and went straight into mobile, right? And so, there are a lot of opportunities for companies across different industries today to figure out where they are today and how do they want to get to the promised land. And it's not about, again, software development capabilities. They still need to focus on your area of domain expertise, but you need to work with the right set of companies and partners to supply you with the underlying technologies.
Are there buckets do you see of clear like the open AI and the Facebooks, right? They're and the Googles, like they are, bleeding edge ahead of the pack. Is there like groupings or buckets of companies that you think are available for leapfrogging? Like who's still who do you see like, oh, these guys, they're not doing it yet, but man, I really see opportunity for them to explode in their growth because they've waited this long, they're actually going to leapfrog, and they will be the mobile first users, the AI first users, having skipped the PC.
Yeah. So I've always been wrong in guessing this, just to be very frank about it. And the reason I've been wrong is because I would see opportunities for certain companies, even the big ones like the Googles of the world, thinking, oh, they're going to do this, and then they end up not, right? Or vice versa. And so I've always been surprised at a company's willingness to invest and take risk. And I think that's a very important message when I think about innovation, because innovation does require failure. But the failure actually results in some kind of learning. And with how fast technology is moving today, I think every company needs to think about what is their innovation budget and what is their appetite to do it, and to be very, very honest with themselves. And that will really enable them to maybe bet on the right thing or completely miss the boat.
Oh man, I love it, Johnny. We're almost at time here, and the series is called Turbocharge Tomorrow for a reason. It's about actionable insights. So, Johnny, if there's one thing technology leaders could start doing today to prepare for tomorrow, what advice would you give them? What would that be?
Yeah, going to what I just said, I think innovation requires learning and adapting, right? And so don't be too conservative in your approach. The things that work in the past, you need to readjust your thinking in terms of what can we let loose a little bit? Can we find, is it more policies for our employees to try new tools? Is it investing in a couple of technologies just to learn about it, to run a few pilots, right? Is it, building a new product or a solution in a different way that we didn't offer our users before? I think that innovation is really important because you don't want to be left behind, because there's a muscle in adapting new tools and new solutions, and that needs to be developed through innovation. So that's my advice, which is don't be too conservative and spend a portion of your energy on these endeavors.
And it sounds like also that it's not too late, that if you're in a company or an industry that hasn't gotten started, you actually find yourself in potentially a better position than some people who kind of did a middle ground and are kind of halfway in it.
Absolutely.
Well, Johnny, thank you again for sharing your insights and cutting through some of this AI hype. Really appreciate you focusing on some practical, actionable items. And it's been really enlightening to have you here. So just thanks again. And where can we find you, Johnny?
Yeah, you can find me, on LinkedIn, Johnny Lee. Pretty easy to find. But look, I've just really enjoyed this conversation. It's, we're part of a global world, but I'm still deeply embedded in the LA community and West Coast. So just wonderful to connect with you and be on this conversation.
Amazing. Well, thanks again, Johnny, and appreciate having you here.